Hey everybody, long days and pleasant nights. Welcome to A Walk Along the Beams, officially episode 3. We're on book 3, The Wastelands. We're doing part 1 of this book, broken into 2. Introduce everybody. We got Trev. What's up, Trev?
What's up?
We got Steve. What's up, Steve? And we got Namman.
Yo.
We'll play this real quick. I got a special intro just for this episode.
Long days and pleasant nights. Welcome to Walk Along the Beams with your host Evil Mike and featuring Norenrad, Philtastic, Namman, Steve the Comic Voice, and Trev the Shipping Guru. Set back and relax as we discuss the Wastelands.
Got a nice little introduction. Yeah, that was, and AI will play a bigger part in this story as we go along, right? I had to do that, for the new reader. It won't make no sense yet.
Okay,
but we're getting
AI
there.
doesn't know how to pronounce my name.
Hey, I thought it did pretty good. I think she kind of messes up with Trev the Shipping Guru. All right, so the Wastelands, right? Steve's been holding it up. We got right here. This is officially book 3 in the Dark Tower series, copyrighted originally. Technically, in 1990, there was a limited edition that was released, but technically for the public, it was 1991. This version that I was reading was the revised 2003, but there's no revision at all. And so from 1987 to 1991 was the gap in between books, and this is probably the smallest gap he has in his writing repertoire. But we got the Dark Half in '89, the Stand, revised and cut, released, which was a big part of that whole year for him, was 1990, and the Needful Things 91. Also in 90 was 4 Past Midnight, and then he broke off and did a nonfiction, Nightmare in the Sky, in '88. So he still stayed busy. But without further ado, let's get into it. We got book 1, Jake, Fear and a Handful of Dust. Now, before I even get going, how did it feel, Trav, to read that name? Right, first chapter. I mean, right off the book. What'd you think about seeing Jake as the first title of this book, and he's not even there yet?
My favorite character so far, man. I was heartbroken. Just seeing that name just got me really excited for this book, for sure.
That's what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna say hi to the chat real quick. And I'll read my little paragraph like, we had Las Cruces, who seems to be first everywhere. What's up, James? And right on time, I got
Mexico.
Philtastic. What's up, Phil?
Hey, sorry I'm a little late here.
Hey, Philtastic.
You're
right on time.
Of kids
Right on
not eating
time.
problems.
Skip a little saying hi to the chat real quick. I got Las Cruces, and we got, it looks like me, but it's really Trev that was writing the whole Gunslinger credo in there. But thanks for that. I love the credo. We're gonna get into that. I got Steve. I got Tina. What's up, Tina?
Tina?
Your OG.
Got Trev. Got Kenneth. What's up, Kenneth Bird? And that looks to be everybody at the moment. All right, so book 1, Jake, Fear and a Handful of Dust. And I just asked Trev this question, Phil. How did you feel seeing that first line as the title? How did you feel seeing Jake? He's not even really in the story yet, but that was the first.
At first, I was just kind of like, we're revisiting Jake, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense.
So officially, we start off with Barenbone, and probably one of my favorite parts of the book. We pick up the adventure 2 months and 60 miles after the drawing on the beach. Roland, Susan, Eddie are currently traveling through the Great West Woods in Outworld. We get small previews on the Gunslinger training, and we hear the Gunslinger credo for the first time. I do not aim with my hand. He who aims with his hand has forgotten the face of his father. I aim with my eye. I do not shoot with my hands. He who shoots with his hands has forgotten the face of his father. I shoot with my mind. I do not kill with my guns. He who kills with his guns has forgotten the face of his father. I kill with my heart. So this leads into my first question of the night, besides the Jake one. What does the Gunslinger Creed imply to you? What values does it demonstrate? What morals? And tonight I'm going to jump on Steve first.
That gets you into that mindset. It's a credo. It's kind of like with the military too. It's things to make you do the exact same routine over and over again, get you into that mindset, ready to kill. Because they've all talked about it too during the book, about them getting this kind of outwardly feeling that they're not themselves anymore. Like they get this coolness that comes over them. And it's important to have that because you have to be dispassionate. You have to be seeing everything for what it is and not hesitate, because you hesitate, you're dead. Simple as that.
I like that. Let's go, Phil. I'm going to jump on you next.
Well, for me, to be honest with you, it kind of brings me back to, I know I've talked about this a little bit before on my own channel. For a while, my wife and I were involved with the Elks. I was involved for about 10 years, my wife less than that. And without going too much into it, you have to take an oath. And I used to tell people, because in any volunteer organization, you're not necessarily getting everybody who's there for the same reasons. And I'll be frank, there's some people there who were just there for a cheap drink. But I used to tell people, look, when you take this oath, and especially when you become an officer and you have to take a whole nother oath, it's not something willy-nilly. It's not something that you could just kind of discard. It has some bearing, and it means something. And in here, in terms of the Gunslinger Creed, it's definitely that higher calling to a higher purpose that's bigger than yourself.
Namman, what you got for me?
Well, I think everybody pretty much covered everything. Just a way to focus and, leave it to your instinct, but your instinct has to be trained too. So,
What about reading it as a constant reader? Having we know the credo, but coming back to it written on page, having Susanna, being the first one. But how did that feel?
What now? Susanna was the first one to what?
In the book,
first one to be trained by Roland.
No, I'm just really asking, how did it feel coming back to it, Namman, as an old reader, reading this before and coming back to it?
Yeah, I got a little more out of this because it reminded me that the Roland was saying this to, it was all this time he'd been saying to basically guys, right? Roland first time hears it from the lady.
The female perspective, yeah.
Yeah, from female, right? And that's, first thing I noticed is that I don't remember reading it like that before, where Roland notices the differences. But now that I noticed that difference when I read it again, because he noticed that, and it seems she seems to be a little more. She definitely was more trained in that than Eddie.
Mm-hmm. That they show us, at least. That I agree.
So, yeah, I just that's what I noticed. I don't know if
That's pretty good. Trev, what you got?
Well, the first time that I heard it or that I read it, I thought that they're now gunslingers. They're now a team. Like they've progressed to take that oath, as you're committed to something. And whenever they said it, I almost envisioned Wanted, the movie Wanted. Like whenever they're saying it, just focusing in on what they're doing.
Well, one thing I'd like to add that nobody else kind of brought up, but the effect that it has once they've said it, anybody notice that it grants like almost a magical ability of like a sure shot kind of thing? Like, and Roland's evident about pressing the point that they need to say this before, they physically shoot, especially in the scene with the bear, with he's like, say it, say it, but it seems to have like, I mean, once they say it, believe it, use it, it almost has like that hypnotize, like that magical effect that kind of travels with Roland,
Well,
Yep,
Mike,
they
let me
become
ask you though. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
They become hyper active, like hyper aware of
hyper
everything
aware.
around them.
Yeah.
Do you think it's actually some kind of magic, or do you think it's more of kind of just psyching yourself into it?
Psyching.
And this, for instance, I want to say it's more the psyching itself out. I mean, you could always say there is that magic behind it. It's almost like the hypnotizing thing. And he does tell us that the hypnotizing trick he learned from Martin. But with the credo, I want to say like, it's more like mental. It's more like that, because already in the book, a couple times he's expressed that feeling that or a couple of the members are at this point are expressing that feeling what happens when they are successful with their shots and stuff, the adrenaline that comes with it, it's almost like a berserker rage type of moment. I mean, Susanna described, she describes it as being overwhelming and not understanding how Roland can even, keep that pinned inside of him. It happens so much kind of thing.
And
So
I'm thinking that everybody here has already felt that kind of feeling when you have that inspiring music that you absolutely love that just pumps you up, and you feel invincible once you hear that music.
That's rock. That's rock.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever
Highway
it
to
is.
hell while I'm driving.
I almost had a
Well,
thought
go ahead, Trev.
I almost
Sorry.
had a thought that maybe by them saying it because he's their teacher and he's more powerful than we know at this point, that maybe they're gaining strength from him.
Yeah,
It's another way to look at it. Like,
Yeah.
master and apprentice, like once the apprentice finally, accepts the tutelage from the master or whatever, that there is a different sense of, just focus on whatever skill they're trying to teach. So I want to say that's there too. Like, because in the book we're talking about, we met these characters on the beach that are pulled basically into this world, whether they agree to it or not, but one would, okay, so all of a sudden by this book, they're already like, yeah, we're down for this world. We're already training as gunslingers. Like, there is no conversation that pops up where, Eddie fights being a gunslinger or Susanna fights being a gunslinger. That's not really, it's the opposite where they both, kind of just jumped on board with this, without like, there's no, I mean, I want to say we get like a little bit of question from Eddie, later on.
Remember when they were training? They train without the bullet, right? Because he wanted to save the bullets. So this is a very similar to like a taekwondo or karate, or they have a forms. You learn the forms, or in Japanese,
like sparring, stuff like that.
Right? So you learn the forms, and when you're learning the forms, it's much different than the execution, right? When you're actually sparring someone. Now, in these different martial arts, yours breathe out, you yell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I love this.
So that's the things that you do, and it leaves you blank.
Fresh slate.
Learn all those kata, so your body's already ready, right? Your body's already ready. Both Eddie and Susanna, they don't know that their body's ready. So what Roland is doing is make them say this, and now they're not thinking about anything else, and just leaving it to their body to just execute.
Training the mind.
Because they already been trained. They are all so it's just.
No, I love it, and you pick. I mean, art of war, and like the greatest thing. I mean, you can't I mean, how can you have these people form as a gunslinger and them not know the basics, and then that's exactly what this is. You can't, that's especially having the test. We've seen that to become a gunslinger, there's a test involved. So how do you, incorporate this new style of gunslinger tutorage, and offer the same test for these new gunslingers kind of thing? No, I love it. No, I mean, all great points, but I think that's exactly what it is. He's training the mind. I mean, especially you're not. I mean, you're talking about it on a level of clean slate that nobody's ever seen before because they're not on Earth anymore. They're in a whole a whole other planet. They kind of no that I love it, but I can say me reading again, I got goosebumps reading the Credo, like just seeing it in written form, knowing that we're at this point. Like, yes, like some things as the constant readers start clicking, like, and that's one of the really good clicks in the story. Let's just say. Um, all right, so let's move on. All right, because we get to something really good here. Due to shooting with Susanna from training practice, we get the attention of it gets the attention of a forest guardian, Charding. At the same time, Eddie rediscovers a lost gift for carving, while spending some time with this gift. Charding bursts through to attack Eddie. Roland and Susie have come in a flash. Eddie, being smart, has climbed a tree for dear life. Susie gets some on the job training and kills the bear. So my next question tonight is going to be: anybody know the reference to Shardink the bear?
Mm-mm.
I'm gonna leave this one open because there is a real answer to this, but he is a direct reference to something important, and it's referenced twice, not by just his name, the bear name, but Eddie references the direct reference to what it's tied to, and I can give you a hint. It's
Or
tied to
RoboCop?
It's tied to rabbits. Mm-mm.
Oh,
The real reference is actually a literary source. It's how many people here know the story of Watership Down?
No.
Nope.
It's kind of a story where it's like Animal Farm or Mouse, where they took like anamorphic characters and put them in those real world.
Aesop's Fables.
Kind of. The second book in the series is literally titled Charding the Bear. And in the story, it's about a military capturing this bear and conducting experiments on him. um, but the actual the author of that story is Richard Adams, that being one of Stephen King's like favorite icons or whatever.
So he
Um,
plagiarized them.
Yeah, basically, I mean, literally took,
Straight out
the first,
stole that shit.
the first time I read this, I did not know that this was a reference to it. I thought it was just cool as a guardian, cyborg bear, like, yeah.
Yep.
Um, later on, learning that it was a reference, but directly how referenced, like how like it's almost like that's the backstory for this bear. I
That's
mean,
pretty cool.
yeah, it's kind of meta. I like that.
Well, yeah, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, because I remember that I read Stephen King's memoir, and I think you did as well. Did he say that he got his start writing like short stories into a sci-fi magazine?
Yes, that's
So,
exactly where.
yeah, I mean, because I kind of took the whole cyborg bear type of thing, kind of like almost as a kind of a direct callback to his time with sci-fi writing.
He kind of that the original purpose, like, well, not maybe not purpose, but one of the things that he intended to do with the series was to prove, because it was not a big thing at that time, but he was trying to do like layered multi genres, and he wanted to prove that you could throw sci-fi in with horror, or you could do romance with, and that was kind of like his, because I think it amounts to the idea of the story. I think the idea of the story, it really couldn't constitute without some sci-fi elements or without some horror elements or with it, and I think that has, but no, you're 100% right. He started in science and fiction, not even that, but romance, like digest as well. He did like, I want to say 4 or 5 short stories, and the
Mhm.
Gunslinger broken down to 4 or 5 different parts was one of those
Oh, I
short
didn't know that.
stories. Originally, the Gunslinger was broken into like I want to say 4 or 5 like chapter style, like you had to get like 5 different issues of that magazine to get the whole story. But originally, that's how the Gunslinger was officially released before it was turned into a novel.
Hmm.
But that's just with the first one. The rest of them were official novels that he. But that's where he started at 19. He was sending. I think that publisher was the 10th publisher that he sent his story to. I mean, it was kind of the same story to Carrie, Pet Cemetery. Carrie was thrown around so much that I think it went through 18 different publishers that they turned it down. And if it wasn't for his wife, like finding it in the trash, reading it, and her telling him, "No, this is a good story. We need to," then that's I don't know, Cobb, baby. That's all I gotta say.
I have a question.
Yes.
You're talking about a bear now, right? You're talking about
Mhm.
cyborg bear, and you're talking about sci-fi. Do you notice anything that would have been different? If you notice anything that would have been different if a story was told now, present time versus when Stephen King told the story back then?
Specifically with the bear, related to the bear?
Yeah, related to the bear.
The
The
technology
satellite.
that we got now.
The satellite dish wouldn't.
Regarding the
This-
technology.
Yeah, the satellite dish wouldn't be needed. And Namman picks up like a very valid point that there is some kind of like outdated kind of river. No, but I mean it's still. I think there are. I will admit there are
I mean,
some
remember
times.
having a little antenna coming out of our cell phones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are some moments in the book where I often wondered if somebody was in their 20s or even earlier, if they would even get some of the references that said, like, Eddie traveling with a Walkman or, stuff like that, because there
Yeah,
are
well,
just,
even Odetta, even Odetta recognizes that's not a hat.
what's up, bud?
Roland calls it a hat, right? Roland
Yeah,
calls
tin
it a
hat.
Odetta sort of recognizes with her technology that's available to her, and Eddie recognizes it with the technology. But
That actually brings up a valid point. That was one of the research moments that I physically had to go check and make sure during that time in 1963, did they have satellite dishes? And sure enough, 2 years before, like it was a televised thing, was the first like satellite dish. I was like, dang.
Well, those
No, but
Guardians have been around for thousands of years. So,
Well, okay, and that's another like speculated thing, right? Because that comes from Roland's
Myth.
stories and understanding of like, but I mean, to his knowledge, like I want to say it's older than thousands of years old because we already know that kind of, I mean, we've seen time.
but their 1,000 years could still 2,000 years in front of us, right?
I think in our world it would be different because it's even expressed later on in the book that time still moves at a regular speed here, maybe a little faster than it should. But I want to say like it does express that well on Earth that time, but in mid-world, outworld, all that, it's moving at like just crazy. And even that's explained, right? Because we do get that from Roland about the magnetism, about that's coming up with the beams, but he does explain that it's not just time that's moving funny. It's kind of a little bit of everything that's going funny. I think he says everything but gravity, right?
Yeah. You can't rely on any time.
So here's my first real question, because the shard ink is just a cool reference, something neat that the
Big.
oh yeah, an Easter egg, kind of a meta moment that I think because of how the book. Okay, so the real question is: describe your thoughts on North Central Postronics and why the need for the Guardians. What role do you think they had at remaking the world? These old ones. And I'm gonna go with somebody new. And Trev, guess what? You're right there next to me. I went with Phil for it. Describe your thoughts on North Central Postronics, the maker of Shard Ink and some other technology that we've seen previously. The water pump was also made by North Central Postronics. This isn't the first time it's popped up.
They're obviously a big player in Midworld to have their mark all across. I believe the Guardians are there just to protect the tower, protect time.
Would you say in a good way or a bad way? You know, like, I mean,
I don't think it's good or bad.
hmm.
I think it's just, yeah, time is time. And I mean, they don't want people messing it up. I don't really have too many thoughts on it.
So you would say that the old ones were maybe neutral, or
Yeah,
okay?
that's what I would guess.
What's up, Brian?
Do you say hi to Comic Verse?
I don't.
I did. What's up, Towdy? I'm gonna go with you, Namman. What you got on this? Describe your thoughts on North Central Postronics and why the need for the Guardians. What role do you think they had in remaking the world? Have you even thought of it?
I haven't really. It seems like more like it seems like more like a myth, right?
Mm.
And that myth turns into the real thing. But like for instance, the turtle.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the turtle talk that's a if you want to throw in the Easter egg about different books, the turtle, the whole world is on top of the turtle. That's not a mythology or a novel somewhere, right? I don't know who wrote that one, but
Some of it's made up and some of it's King himself. Like, so some of it, the Myrtle, the turtle thing, and
yeah,
then the girth. Some of that is like I forget what poem it comes from, but it's a poem. But like, I want to say it's like maybe 1 or 2 lines that's real, and the rest King added.
anyway, everybody describes the world in a little different ways. Different mythology has a different kind of describing the universe, right? Is so I don't know. I see it more like a symbolism. This is the one that defends this view of the universe, and that's the one that defends that view of the universe, and they all go to the central tower. But far as the company itself, I thought it's a little pretty foretelling in Stephen King's view as a writer. You know one huge company being involved in everything, right? And, and that and they're even though their advancement, I mean, they have advanced tremendously, but they also because of we relying on that particular advancement, the world has moved on as well. So it's like a tower represents a one leg rather than 3 legs. If you got 3 legs or multiple legs, if one fails, it could still stand.
Still stand on the other
But
leg.
tower is it's like just one leg, and if it falls, everything falls. So I don't know. I saw it as more of a symbolic than anything uh, anything that's maybe I'm missing something, but I just saw it as symbolic thing.
I love everything you said. Let's go with Philtastic. What you got to add to this?
This whole part of the book, or I should say, this whole book in the book, chapter within the book, whatever you want to say. To be honest with you, it kind of took me out of the main story a little bit, just because the way they were describing the bear, and he's a guardian, and even some of the things that was going on with him a little bit longer, and then the turtle, like Namman mentioned, remind me of something out of like a video game. Like I felt like, oh, okay, this is like a Legend of Zelda mini boss or something. I didn't see the bear as good or evil. I just kind of saw him more as kind of like what Trev said, almost like a force of nature that was somehow corrupted. Now, I don't know if North Central Positronics was corrupting him or if there was just something else. I felt like they didn't really get into that too much, but it was pretty evident something was wrong with him. And I think the fact that something is wrong with him is kind of a small, as a symptom of a bigger issue that we have yet to see in the entire series. So I don't know something is happening with this world, like it's rotting or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm here for, I guess you could say, on that.
I like that. I mean, you brought up, I mean, something that's not mentioned, but the bear, when we meet him, is extremely sick to the point where, I mean, he kind of knows what's going on, but he doesn't know what's going on. He thinks he's back with the old ones, right? And he's coming to stamp them out because they finally come back. And no, but I mean, pretty much. I mean, the sickness is kind of important, I guess you can say. Like you said, there's those first signs of rot, and it's not the first time we've seen this, right? In the Gunslinger, it's pointed out very early, and not the time thing, but just the world around him. You know, the way some of those things have gone. That actually is one of my favorite parts. Him, the Eddie getting sneezed on, like it's another one of those moments when like
Worms.
Worms. It's another one of those moments where like, you know, Eddie like demonstrates steel among steel. In that first appearance, we have him like fighting naked, which I think would be a tough thing for a lot of people. What's up, Joe? No, but then we get this scene where he's trying to save his life or do something, and he gets he's still going with this stuff. All, you know, I mean, in one regard, at least, all the worms were like instantly die. I mean, I think that would have been a different story if these things were alive and like trying to get in him, like, you know. So I think it was kind of like ingenious that Stephen King. I mean, because that would have been a whole nother fear if like he had been sneezed on and these things tried to take him over, you know, kind of thing. Like, Steve, what you got to add to this, buddy?
The Guardians were created because the great old ones screwed up stuff, just like with anything with technology. They wrecked the beams in the past, and they needed to protect the beams going forward. So they needed to create the Guardians to protect the beams at all costs because they screwed shit up in the past. That's the big thing that happened there.
How are you doing this, Dad? That's what I have. No, 100%. That's kind of where I was going with this. Hopefully, somebody, and not to discount anything, but exactly like.
I mean, whatever you use to fix, that fixes becomes a problem. I mean, that's how it is now. Whatever.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it reminds me of a Forgotten Realms book
Jeff
that I read
becoming
years ago.
Sole influencer about, you know, how our society is created, right? I mean, just imagine that. What kind of you know, yeah, everything will be like all become robotics and all that stuff, but at what expense, right?
Yeah, exactly. I can remember reading it and coming up with like different conclusions, but always my thought always wondered like, what was the need of creating this Guardian? To, you know, was it the opposite? Was it that they created it out of their field, and, you know, previous things, you know, and then there was other stuff that lead into the sci-fi aspect, because in this world, it's not like we see the sci-fi aspect of it all the time, right? It's kind of sparse here and there at this point, you know. So it's kind of one of those things. How come the old ones only touch bases with these things, but then we go to towns that are kind of set up like our Western time, you know? How come technology, you know? But those were some of my thoughts. Anything anybody else want to add into the bear scene before I move on, because this is a huge and dope moment in the book. That made Phil, he took it the other way, where it was just like, what's with this bear, like?
I thought it was fun. I thought it was fun part.
Let me ask you guys something, and if I'm jumping ahead to something that we just haven't read yet, let me know.
Hey, Sir John.
If these guardians are forces of nature, they're guarding the beams, is North Central Positronics kind of like the antithesis of the beams? If so, are these like little electronics and satellites and something on the animals like a form of corruption? Like, is that making them sick?
Could also go that way, right? I mean, that like maybe the guardians were always there, these things that protect the beams. Like, I mean, you know, usually when you think in fairy tales and that word guardian, you know, it's usually something that's like there by godly nature, right? Like it was put there by Zeus or by Ra, or to protect something, whether it be. So I could see it going that way too, where like North Central Postronics is like this epic evil force, and they got a hold of these guardians and did whatever they wanted to do with them, kind of thing. I mean, do we know proof beyond a doubt this thing is literally protecting the beam? I mean, it's just there, but I mean,
it's a theory.
Yeah, Roland was certainly an absolute wonder because it was a myth to him, and then when he sees it in reality, his reaction was just like, "Holy crap, this is real!"
Yeah,
So all the stories that I was told as a child it's not false; it's the real deal here. And North Central Positronics, I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but it was explained in the books later on. But I think it was also explained in the movie that this is a company that not just messed with science, but they also dabbled in magic too. They wanted to combine the two.
Both, yeah.
Because magic already existed in their world, and then they had science, so let's combine the two together. And we see evidence of that all over the place with the doors.
I don't remember that, but that's cool.
At this point, they have. We'll explain some of that. I know what you're referencing later on. And we do get an explanation on what's going on with North Central Pos. I can say the explanation surprised me. I didn't see it going that way. So I can't say there's some fun in that, I guess. But I guess it just depends on how far you read into it. If you read into it the other way, you could get it right off the bat, kind of thing.
Yes, you can.
All right, so make sure I'm at the right part. Roland tells of the old ones and the beams. Draws a map that looks like a wagon wheel. 12 guardians and 6 beams hold the Dark Tower. After the battle with the bear, they follow till they reach its home, leading them to the path of the bear. We learn that Roland is again sick, and Eddie dreams of Jake the boy. Question for this part right here is, why is Roland... I'm getting ambulances. Why is Roland suffering this paradox? Why did the key in the door end his suffering? Let's go with... I'm going to go with you first, Steve. Let's let you go.
So why is... Okay, I got to percolate on that one. That's a good question. Yeah,
why
he's got that paradox. That paradox is happening. It's probably because they were getting closer and closer to Jake. It might have been that they were at the source of Shardnak at whatever his location was. It might have been stronger there because they were on the beam. And yeah, the paradox was starting to split in his head, kind of like it was with Jake too. Both of them are remembering different acts, but both of them happened. And yeah, they're trying to reconcile it in their heads. And I don't know why the key probably because it's going to open the door to get hold of them. That seemed to calm them down, but that was something that Eddie came up with. It was Eddie's thought. I don't know. I'm a little bit muddled.
You're good. So you're touching on some good things, but going in the right direction because I got a point to this one. Okay. Let's go, Trev, baby.
Okay, what was the question again? Say it again.
Why is Roland suffering the paradox? He's sick for the 3rd time in this book now. Why did the key in the door end his suffering?
I think that it kind of goes back to the 2nd book where the 3rd door was supposed to be the boy and it got reshuffled. So he kind of progressed further than he should have without Jake. So it kind of branched his memories. He was forgetting shit. And then Jake, the same with Jake. He didn't know what was real. And well, he knew it was real, but he couldn't come to terms with how it was real.
Effing both of them up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go, Namman. What you got for this, Namman?
What I noticed is that it really depends on time of Jake, right? As Jake was approaching that time when he's supposed to have died, and when he didn't die, that's when the paradox starts, right? That's when the paradox starts, right? So as he's approaching that time, he's okay until he's okay until he's nearing that time that he's really messed up as he passes that time.
Mhm.
and that parallels Roland's. Of course,
Yeah, Roland's already passed that one.
well, we don't know. We don't know when. I mean, stories told
Yeah, you're right.
different sequences, but we don't know what's happening with Jake's time as he's traveling through his time, and Lolo's time as he's traveling through his time. It feels like they're in parallel. Like Jake's time and Lolo's times are sort of like synced, and as soon as Jake reaches that, Lolo's time is also, you know, getting messed up. So it's a paradox for both of them, and that's where I saw it when I saw them. Even though they're told in different, of course, it's hard to tell two different story in parallel like that. But
Yeah.
I saw some parallelism as they were getting worse and worse and worse. It matches with the Jake's getting worse, even though it was told second time. But yeah, and it also made me think that these guys are in different. Jake is talking about turtle, right? And bear. We passed the bear, and so they're in the different opposite end of each other's universe, kind of.
That's a good one right there. I didn't catch that one. The Turtle
Mm.
Bay, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Turtle
Mhm.
Bay. You're right.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, there's a lot of that, and that's it's going to another question, but there's a lot of that. Like I guess you can call it foreshadowing, but um, before I go on, and I love it. Let's go, Phil. What you got to add to it?
To be honest with you, it kind of, excuse me, this whole portion of the book, to me, the whole tone with Roland was I felt like, in general, it was challenging everything he knew. I mean, prior to this, I felt like Roland knew everything about this world, or in the case of what we saw in the last book, when he was outside of his world, he can easily relate it to something he was familiar with.
Mhm.
Now things are different. You know, he sees this bear, just like we're saying, this is this mythological thing, and now it's pretty evident he has no idea what's going on anymore. And I think it's a little bit jarring to him on some degree. So I think when he sees that key, it's kind of tying him back to, okay, this is something I know. This is almost like an absolute truth type of thing.
I like that. I love it.
Yeah, that is cool. That's good.
Yeah, it is. One of the things I'm looking for, because you bring up a valid point. Like two different times we see in this reading, not just with the Guardian, but with the river, right? The Send River is another myth that he had heard about as a kid that he finally gets to see and sees in real life. So I want to say that you're in that right frame of thinking, because we do. I mean, most of Eddie and Susanna's like knowledge from this world is coming from Roland, the source, right? And then we come across these points in the story where they're like, "Oh, I thought that was a fairy tale. That shit's real." Like, I mean, it's kind of jarring, especially if that was your teacher or master kind of thing, to say that to his students. Like, well, I know about this bear, but I thought it was the, kids, no. So I want to say, you're exactly right in that thing, and it's also kind of like another scary part of the book. I want to say at this point, there's a couple scary points. Nam brought up, the point of the paradox with Jake walking up to that moment and him getting up to the street thinking he was about to get pushed. I don't know about y'all, but me reading that section, even knowing what was going to happen, it's still tense. And
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think it's more tense the fact that he knew that it was supposed to be coming, and I mean, of course it doesn't, but still, just the fact that this kid knew he was about to die and was about to like have to go through it, fate or whatever you call it, like it's a scary thing,
And then he actually
Um,
stepped off at one point and got caught.
So one of the reasons that I asked this question is because by this point in the journey, right, we've seen movement from both sides of the alignment, good and bad, right? In the first book, we see Roland make some pretty bad choices as far as some things that he should have done, right? Okay, in the second book, we see some different stuff. We start seeing some love and some smiles, some laughter coming from Roller, right? Almost to the point where he kind of looks like he's changing. But then we get this book, and they don't know where to go, right? Up until they start doing things the right way, and all of a sudden stuff starts happening. Like, I mean, we call it car, right? But like incidentally, when they weren't moving, that's when the paradox happens. They're training, doing stuff. Right after that, that's when they run into the bear. It's almost the same thing with Jake. And like, I want to believe that the key, the door, all that relies back to Kef. Kef is often forgotten in this story, but you can't have Ka without Kef. And Kef is like the life force. It's water. It's all this other stuff. But them moving in the right direction they're supposed to be is what fixes it, kind of thing. Think about it in the opposite. If Roland would have been never given the key, what would have done with the paradoxes? Like, he would have been literally like ripped into two. At some points during the reading, it almost like reads that way, that Jake could be split into two, like, or Roland himself. Roland gets to the point when, where he literally stops everything and like kneels and starts praying to the heaven, kind of thing.
Scotty.
What's up, Scotty? I didn't say it before. What's up, Paul? No, but I want to believe, and of course, I don't think there's a wrong or right, but I want to believe once they start moving the right ways to the quest, the good stuff opens up for them, right? And once they start like dilly dallying and doing stuff they're not supposed to do, that's when the bad stuff starts happening, kind of thing. Yeah. So, my next question is: we saw mini guardians right after Sharding, right? They followed him back to his lair, and we saw these little, like, 5 different little mini robots. They're never actually titled mini guardians, but you would have to assume that they're with him. There's some kind of status on that level. But what are your thoughts on the duties or the jobs that these things had with Sharding? Do you believe that they were there keeping him in repair or something like that? Because that's discussed. Or were they maybe the reason for the infection and some of that stuff? Has anybody actually thought about what those 5 little things were doing with Shardik? What was their purpose? That kind of stuff. And I'm going with Phil. Let's go with you this time.
To be honest with you, I didn't regard them as guardians, I guess the same way like the bear. I kind of, and I think a part of that was, Roland seemed amazed by this bear, and thinking specifically of the rats, for example, it was kind of like not as, wow, look at this. It was more like, there's a rat. Oh, but he's got these electronics and everything he's hooked up to. I took it as whatever reason they have these electronics. Again, I'm kind of going with North Central Positronics being the cause of whatever's ailing this world. I don't know if they're reporting information or if they're being controlled somehow, but I didn't really take them as this kind of natural kind of guardian sense.
I agree with I agree with Phil. I didn't take them as a guardian, mini guardian. I just saw them as a little maintenance crew. Have you seen the movie where there was these 3 robots taking care of a garden? They're programmed to take care of a garden, and they were fly out in space, and they were called Huey, Dewey, Louie. I don't know if you guys remember that movie. It's
You talking about Black Hole?
No, not Black Hole. It was
It sounds familiar,
it was sort of like back then, sort of like a tree hugging movie. So it's they had these like dome that, because planet Earth didn't have the environment
like
wasn't
stable life system.
couldn't maintain these green trees and plants and stuff. So they had these like a greenhouse out in space and they're ordered to discard that because planet Earth is having some difficulties, and they're ordered to discard it. One guy in Rebel, I want to save this, so he killed all the crews and he killed himself and let 3 robots take care of the garden. And so it floats out in space, and their job is to take care of this garden. Well, I saw these robot as something that where they're supposed to take care of the bear, but
Like
way
maintenance bear.
way Nolan, way these guys describing these three, they're like they lost their function, they lost their duty, you know, and they even actually feel pity for them, and I would feel pity for those Huey, Dewey, Louie robots if they lose the garden entirely and they have nothing to take care of, right? So yeah, that's what it felt like to me. Is that these are the ones that serve the bear, not. I mean, of course,
Not an opposite.
yeah, not an opposite, not an opposite. Not
Gotcha.
Silent Running is the movie. Look, Chris is right. That's right.
Oh, Silent Running. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you
Oh,
go.
I've seen that.
Go Las Cruces.
Yeah, Go Lost Cruise. Thanks. I saw Red Dwarf and I was trying to think. I do remember that. And I was like, nah, I don't think that was it. I don't remember the robots.
It's called Huey, Dewey, Louie. One of them dies, and two of them taking care of the
Garden.
the garden. But if those two cannot, I mean, if they have nothing to take care of, I would feel really feel sorry for those two robots. Yeah.
Good answer. All right. Steve, you're up.
I'm thinking that those robots that were created by North Central Positronics
Yeah.
were, they're not Guardians. They were like probably their early experimentations on, because they're all different little creatures, right? Bat, there was a rat, there was like a little dump truck
Tonka
thing.
truck, yeah.
Tonka truck. Maybe they were maintenance, but I think they're almost like they were experiments before they got into actually making an actual cyborg. They wanted to play with these lower life forms, replicate them as robots, and then maybe start working on ones where they would add the organic parts to them to make them into an actual cyborg. So it's almost like they were failed attempts at what they were, Sharnak was ultimately the success story. And they were just kind of left over. And like you said, they were all broken down. Half of them, they lost their function. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. But they sure as hell were pretty lethal. All the little blades and teeth and things that were described.
It's pity
like
first.
Jesus.
It's pity first until that thing comes at them, and then it's a whole different story, right?
Yeah. They weren't so pitiful then, were they?
So
there you go.
Trev.
Oh, just pretty much what Steve said. I mean, I think that they were part maintenance and part keeping the area clear for him. I mean, there was bones around, so they had killed other animals or people, obviously. And whenever they got there, wasn't there a part saying that they seemed like they were depressed after the bear died? Like they were just
they were saying they had somebody mentions they feel like it looks like they just lost their
best friend or something.
They lost.
Yeah, I think it was like they lost their purpose and direction.
They lost purpose in life, kind of thing.
So they were definitely linked to him, but like Steve said, they're probably just failed experiments that were put there to keep.
So that
his
would remind me of more of the Harrison Ford movie. Was that one? Harrison Ford movie where he's replicant, and there's the advanced.
Oh, Blade Runner.
Blade Runner, yeah. That would be more like that then, because there's some experimental replicants then. Yeah, okay. But I didn't think of it that way. But now that you guys mention it, that's a pretty cool, pretty cool.
I'm gonna say
we're all here.
Yep. There's always some stuff that you might, a new theory, a new, option. I can say the first time I read it the other way. Like, I mean, it's a bear, right? And the maintenance thing is there. I kind of see that, but at the same time, I saw it the other way. Is like, and I didn't take that in effect, but I could see that maybe field experience. But I always saw the bear as like they were there against their will. Like it had nothing to do with maintenance or something like that. Like the bear kept them around to like play with or basically like kidnap things. Because like one thing that always bothered me was the functionality of a maintenance droid, right? And like I mean, they don't really seem all that like functional to what this gigantic King Kong sized bear would have needed.
70 foot, and these are like
they're all the size of like small dogs, It's like unless they all have like super long antennas to do.
Eddie, you mentioned maybe he could crawl through the bear and clean him up.
Yeah, he does. But
rotor
that's
Yeah, he
rooter,
goes
okay.
from
So
the-
that's
from the back.
another like question that leads off that. If they were maintenance animals, why is this thing so disease ridden, like dying?
Well,
Like
they're all failing
it,
too.
it is, but it always like I always kind of saw it the other way, and I've talked like to a couple people, and they always said, "Oh, they're maintenance drones." Man, I was like, well, like there's kind of evidence that they might not have been. They might have been like kidnapped or something. They're sitting there running around in circles because that where they are, it's nothing but grass and everything. It's a forest. But right where they are these little maintenance droids, there's like a patch of grass that they've been like just going around in circles for days or weeks or I don't.
centuries. It
Yeah,
was almost,
exactly.
yeah, it was like alluded to that it was centuries, maybe even 1,000 years. They'd just been going around in that circle
In
until their
circles, yeah.
nuclear batteries had failed, and a few of them had failed. But yeah, the dump truck seems to be the only one that might actually be a functional maintenance thing to clean up the poop or whatever from the
Yeah, I
organic
mean,
side.
what was it? The other one was actually like mad at the snake because it wasn't moving fast enough. It actually like produced the pincers and it was like, move your ass, man.
What's the rotor rooter?
Yeah, rotor,
The rotor rooter, yeah.
rotor, rotor.
But what would the bat do? What would the rat do? Like,
I
what
love
are
that
their
book,
functions?
James. That's a great book.
Do robots dream?
Yeah, Philip K. Dick.
Ooh.
That's a great god. But no, I mean, because I never even thought about that. What that was brought up because I can see it going either way. Either they are like functionality set with the bear, or like that they're just. But I kind of like that answer. That and something I never thought about. That they were like early experiments from the old ones, working their way up to the Guardians. I mean, that thing was King Kong size. Reference. It was 72 feet tall. Like you talk about some technological like masterwork within that thing. I will like to point out like how Roland knew exactly how to handle the animal. I mean, he just walked up, popped out the eye, and he was like, "Hey guys, look inside." Like, I mean, for something that he thought was just a fairy tale, he sure as hell like knew exactly that. The second he popped out the eye, there was going to be some cyborg stuff inside.
Yeah, let me ask you something. This might be a little out there, but something Steve said earlier kind of made me think. So when Roland was talking about his gunslinger training in the past, if your training went wrong, you went to the west. If it went right, I'm assuming you went to the east.
Yes.
Keeping that in mind, and the name of this company is North Central Positronics.
Mm-hmm.
Is this company maybe not malevolent like I thought? Like maybe they created these things to ensure the beams are intact? And if that's the case, is North Central Positronics, this is where I'm probably going to jump the shark a bit, like a future version of the Gunslingers? Is that why Roland knows what it is?
I cannot officially answer the question without going into like heavy spoilers, but I can say you got some great thinking going on there. But maybe not exactly the way you're thinking it. But okay, in this reading, we did come across another company, right? Actually, two. But we'll get there, and I'll bring up those two companies. But we're gonna start seeing a couple of these like, and I always like I want to say without going to like spoilers or something like that. It's not really spoilers. What's up, Matt? But maybe corporate wars, like Taco Bell, something like that. Maybe corporate wars might have been a thing,
Demolition Man.
Yeah, maybe.
There you go.
It's all right. Disney's going to own it all soon anyway.
It's getting there. Amazon, Disney, and Apple. They're going to be our overlords.
Google.
Yeah, Google. I love that bag, especially for such a small part of the. It's okay, all out on the floor. This is a big part of the book that I always forgot the first time through. I remember the bear. I always forget that he's got the little like guardians and stuff, and I almost always forget like until we got it. I was like, oh yeah, he's got the little like things running in the circle.
See, it is already like a Disney movie. Oh, the animal friends.
Horror Disney movie.
We've got a giant animal bear that's needing some fixing, and he's got his little animal. He's got his Wally companions.
I could see
Um,
that bear singing the Disney movie where the bear sings.
The bare necessity.
necessities.
Jungle
That's
Book.
what was in his head before he got to Eddie. You know,
Oh shit! Now that song's in my head. Thanks a lot, Namman. Now I got to sing the whole thing. So just let me be for a little bit while I go through the emotions.
Are you
That's your
talking
come
any
sail
more
away.
about this part?
no, and if you want to, can you show that? Share that picture real quick. I want to share a probably not a well-known picture. This is from Stephen King's Second in Command. It's going to be a little hard to see, but this is actually the real diagram of the beams, the guardians. You know, their placement, where they are. But this is actually a map that comes from the Dark Tower Compendium from Stephen King and Robin Ford. But I thought that this would be kind of cool. You know, just an image to see the turtle holding, you know, everything, with the tower and the beams. I thought it was kind of neat. Thanks, Trev.
That's cool.
No, but I was going to say, as far as this part goes, the whole interaction with them coming out and shooting all the guardians, I thought it showed. It really caught me off guard how Roland, his teaching style, he pretty much lets them go till the very end, and then he still saves them if they need saving.
I
So
want to
like,
say, I want to say in this part, it's almost like a soft love, right? Because we
right,
saw some of the way Court handled the gunslingers, especially with like Cuthbert. Now, I mean, you get a backhand for just taking a split second pause, you know. So I want to say, and that's going to tie into a later question, but I want to say that this is like some of that, you know, and maybe, you know, character development, you know, and improvement in some sense, because we're not seeing Roland teach the same way, or at this moment we're not seeing Roland teach the same way that Court did. You know, there is that like, come on, man, stand, be true. You know, he is, you know, packing in some motivational stuff along with, you know, because that's another thing for somebody that's not supposed to be like an out of the box thinker. He shows a lot of out of the box thinking here, you know, getting people to do what they want and you know,
mhm.
Remember,
talking to them at the right moments.
Well,
remember
he
when
knows how to pivot.
remember that was already foretold when they were having discussion with Susan. Susan asked him, "Why don't you, bop my head? Are you going to hit me?" And she said, "You guys are already gunslingers. I only hit the children.
Hmm.
I mean, they in our training we hit the children." And Susan say, "Well, better half of us would think that even that's bad, right?" So will Roland from here on go out there and hit Jake if he makes a mistake, right?
Right.
Well, like Susan was getting attacked, and Eddie's like, "Why aren't you saving her?" And she ends up getting it out herself, and then Eddie almost gets bopped in the head, and it gets shot out of the air. So you still see that Roland is still really capable.
Yeah. Roland is definitely sure that he could have done everything himself, but he's letting the. I mean, those are really cool part of this storyline, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Love
seeing
that part.
the actual skill
The
set of Roland.
the way it baffles Eddie when it happens, like that when he finally sees the quickness that it involves within, you know, Roland like taking out that bat. Like, and he was like, bro, he could have went and got coffee, watched the movie, like did all this other shit before he was like, fuck, I'm slow. Like, no, and there's like, I want to say 4 of those moments in this book, right? And there's one at the end that's like super hidden, or there's one where
Yeah.
Eddie references that Roland's already like adapting his hand to be just as quick as the other one with the right hand.
Mhm.
Um, now, but I love those moments. That moment is one of my favorite. Like that, and the credo with Susan when she takes out the bear, you know, and she just stand and be true, you know, and
See,
you're gonna see. I mean, that's a theme, a big theme within a lot of Stephen King books, especially within this time, is that stand and be true.
I kind of took all of those scenes that you're talking about, linking it back to the gunslinger's creed, that it's the importance of believing in your, for lack of a
Mhm.
better description, believing in your ability and forgetting about whatever hampers you.
Yeah, clearing your mind.
Yeah.
Let everything go.
Exactly, because it'll just
Live and
muddle
let it.
things up. If you're sitting there, you're in your own head, you're not going to make the right decision. And then you'll get everybody killed. That's what they do in the military, right? They got to strip you down and then put in the instinct to kill and get rid of the instinct to run away. That's what Roland has to do to him, and that's what Court did, and that's what the violence comes into play. You got to strip them down and then build up what you want them to be.
But he's doing it with love. It's not
Yes.
like drill
He's
sergeant
doing it
style.
differently. He's dealing with adults. That's why. And it's like Namman said, it's not children. This is teaching and training adults. Something I know a little bit about.
Me personally, I like the way he's going about it. You know, there's
Yes.
there's a
Steve, were
maturity
you a
about it.
sergeant somewhere?
Shh, little do you know about Steve the voice.
I don't know. I'm asking. Come on, tell me.
What was the question?
Were you some kind of a
drill
military
sergeant.
leader, trainer, or
No,
okay?
no. I'm a teacher. So
Oh, you're a
that's
teacher, okay.
what I do.
Shit, one of the harder.
Yeah.
All right, so we have officially finished our first chapter. We're going to go into Key and Rose. We are reintroduced to John and Jake Chambers back in 1977 New York and learn Jake is also suffering the same paradox as well. For 3 weeks, he is being torn through 2 realities while living in his own, going through his 6th grade finals and an odd English finals. Jake ends up skipping out on school and finds a bookstore of the minds. The first question for this part is, with Jake's first truancy, we see he is... I wrote that weird. Can't even remember. Jake's first truancy. Oh, okay, yeah. With Jake's first truancy, we see he is gifted by following the white. Have you seen other examples of this in the story before this? Let's go with Philtastic first.
So following the white.
Yep. We are introduced to a new element during this segment, and it's been there from the beginning, but not necessarily said. But this is the first time during, the books where it's referenced as the white during this time, as after Jake leaves, and, that's what he like specifically calls that's leading him is the white, and it's in parentheses as well.
Let me ask you, because I think I remember the exact part of this, and you guys are going to laugh, because was there something in the reading right there, right after he said white, like the voice?
There was a bunch of voices, and
Yeah, because half of me, like as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, maybe that's where Steve got his name, the voice, Steve the Voice White. And then I was like, oh, probably not. But,
it's all Tina's fault.
There you go. My thought was, whenever you hear, and this is something I may have forgotten from the earlier books, but I know that Roland mentions it a little bit later on, the quote unquote high speak. It's supposed to be like, not like the word of God, but like you're speaking the truth. Or speaking, I guess, whatever gets you closer to the beams at that point.
Let's go with Namman.
Yeah, I've never really got that part. So the white, myself.
Well, I could say, and this is a constant reader thing, that there are some of the elements that we're still encountering. There's some more elements in this story to come. Some have been mentioned briefly. The white has been there from the beginning. I think it's like, and that's some of the examples I was looking for them, but you might not have spotted it. But the white is always, to me, it's always generated the good feeling, like it's within Stephen King's universe, of course, but it's supposed to be
a good vibe.
Yeah, like good vibes, divine. It's supposed to be the notion of like the good things in the world necessarily. I don't know. I'll go to Trev before I go anymore, and then Trev, what you got? What you got?
I don't have anything.
Nothing. Steve, you got anything to add before I go?
So when people are moving along through their lives, you make decisions. You're going along the beam, the path, the journey that you're supposed to take. And when you start making all those incorrect decisions, the bad decisions, things don't feel right. It feels wrong. But when you're doing things exactly the way you're supposed to, the way that things are preordained or possibly ordained, it feels white. It feels the correct path. And then you'll get those paradoxes. Even when you're off the path and you're doing those messed up things, eventually you'll come back to those, what I call nexus points. And those nexus points will feel perfect. They'll feel right. It's white. That's where you're supposed to be. You're like, okay, this is where I'm going. Okay, I'm on my path again. Now I will veer off my path again because I'm going to make stupid decisions, but I'm going to come back to a nexus point at some point, and then I'll be back on my beam again. That's how I see it.
Okay.
So to add into all that, because it's just got exactly right, but to add into that, the two elements that we've seen inflicting the story as we know it, one is Ka, right? And so far in the story, Ka feels like predetermined destiny, something along those lines, like fate, destiny, something like that. And then we're introduced with the element of the white. So we have like a neutral element because, destiny, fate, it can be taken either way. You could be the Antichrist and follow your fate, and it's a bad thing, right? Or you could be the ultimatum hero and follow your fate, and it's seen as good. So we have that middle, and the white is, it's the opposite to something that was also introduced in the last book a lot heavily, but the red, right? So that's going to be our two opposing forces are the white and the red. Um, we're going to see a couple more elements, besides that, and the red has been there, and it's in this book. And I can tell you. And I think Joe had pointed this earlier about Stephen King using specific words, but colors play big parts in this story. We haven't got fully there yet, but we're getting there. But like the white and the red are those. It's basically the ultimate good, ultimate evil kind of thing. If you would have to sum it up, that's how I've always taken the white. I don't, you could say it's God, or you could say it's but I would take it along that lines when it's related to the white kind of thing. It's a pure and holy and good aspects kind of thing.
I
So
guess Stephen King took a lot from the what's that trilogy? The White Wizard versus Gray Wizard.
Lords of the Rings, we know he did, right? Especially in this book, I'm not going to try and point out all the Lords of the Ring references, but there's a couple different, like Helm's Deep is directly like that their introduction to Lud at the end of this book. If you read Lords of the Rings and didn't get a Helm's Deep vibe from that,
let me ask you something that kind of tying back to what we were talking about regarding North Central Positronics and Roland kind of being confused at one point because things aren't going how he thought. Up until this point of the story, we were all thinking, or at least I was under the impression, that Jake was destined to die. Even that's what Jake thought. So if we're going with the idea of Ka in the white, from my understanding of that, Jake dying, he thought was supposed to be this Ka. The fact at this point that he didn't die and now has this other kind of fate where he's heading towards, is it that the white has basically, him dying was not supposed to happen. So now the white and the whatnot and these voices are kind of doing what they can do to correct this wrong.
maybe that's exactly it. Maybe the death of Jake was not supposed to happen. I mean, who read that book and thought that Jake was supposed to die? Like, no. So if Jake wasn't supposed to die, in my mind, the element that made that happen, and we knew that element played a major part in the first book, would be of the red, right? Walter. Okay, so like, if he's doing the shuffling on the cards, and we're supposed to be getting this holy quartet, this King Arthur build, like, would the bad guy be giving you all you remember that you want?
I mean,
But at the same time, like, if the white is that powerful, And like you said, if he wasn't supposed to die, how would it rectify itself, kind of thing?
Well, I mean, Jake foretold it. And he go, there are other worlds than this when he first died, right? So,
Mhm.
and
Multiverse.
I mean,
How many of them does he die in? How many does he not die in? How many
How many
multiple
Jakes?
millions of different
Yeah.
universes?
he almost
almost throughout the first book, Roland is the red. Also, red is throughout that whole book.
anyway. Let me just make another parallel to the Lord of the Ring. The Gray Wizard dies and come back as White Wizard. So
Mhm.
That
So
makes a lot of
Jake is
sense.
now the White
When it
Wizard.
correct itself.
Mm.
And what
So
lesson?
my next question was thoughts on the white, but we've kind of covered all that, within the. Um, so I'm gonna move on from there, unless anybody want to adds in, because we could kind of talk about Jake's essay for a second,
oh, that was
but
so
I,
fun. That was
but
so.
I love Jake's essay. Okay, but I think there's just some stuff that I don't think it's more foreshadowing stuff to come. I don't know if like
No, we can't
I
talk
can.
about it.
Yeah, I can ask Phil and Trev. Did anything pop out at you that you didn't know? Because I will tell you that I mean it's more prophecy. That I mean the stuff that he wrote in the essay evidently has already happened, most of that. But then there's some other stuff that probably didn't make any sense to you as a new reader. Do you have any thoughts on the stuff that came up there?
The only observation I made with the essays and everything is just kind of remembering that when you were a kid, you didn't have these responsibilities. So whatever was going on at school was the big drama of your life. And then, of course, you get past it, and it's like, oh, that wasn't really a big deal. Um, Jake thought he was going to die, thought all this stuff was going to happen. Uh, I couldn't point to an individual detail in the essay that was like, oh, this is probably going to be something later on. But after the fact, when not only did he not die, but his essay wasn't the end of the world. They thought he was troubled, but he
No,
actually
his
did.
teacher thought it was like some crowning achievement. She wanted to
Yeah,
like publish it.
yeah. And these teachers who he made it, he kind of pointed out as, oh, these are people who don't like him or don't see him, maybe with the exception of the French teacher, actually think pretty highly of him.
Mhm. I will say in this essay there's a huge like huge clue, and it actually comes twice from, and there's a
Oh,
lot of clues. There's a lot of clues that are actually in this book, stuff that's coming, but there's a huge like literary reference clue, and this is something that's already been discussed. It's what
And
the
Stephen King already said what influenced him. So
yeah. It was the Robert Browning, and it's with the
Stephen and basically this teacher read something that Stephen King read.
yep, the Robert Brown poem, the Roland came to the Dark Tower.
And that's not a spoiler. That's not a spoiler. That's
yeah.
No, it's not a spoiler.
yeah.
No, but that's a huge like reference to something else.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is that I'm just giving you the facts. The teacher read something that Stephen King read, and that's why she was impressed with
Mhm.
his poem, right?
I love all that. That she thought it was like this literary masterpiece. And,
Mhm.
okay, so leaving the bookstore, Jake is led to the Rose in a vacant lot, protected by the Sombra Real Estate Agency and Carver. I forget what it is. Receiving the key, Jake heads home. Meets Jake. We meet Jake's really nice parents. Learned he aced his final and reads Charlie the Choo Choo. Um, at this point, wordplay and riddles are becoming very important. How does the linguistic puzzles add to the character development, the plot? At this time, especially in the essay, we've come across two riddles, and then we come to the mind of the restaurant of the mind, and we come across three more riddles. So riddles and wordplay. Wordplay has always been Stephen King. I mean, how is this affecting your idea of where the story's going, or what's with the character development? And it's not just one character. I think the only character that isn't experienced to this is Susanna. Everybody else is Roland, Eddie, Jake. Let me hear your thoughts now. What you got?
Well, riddles. Just saying again. Stephen King loved Lord of the Rings, so.
No, and you're 100% right. Right now, we know, because especially for the constant readers, there's some scenes coming up that were like literally taken from Lords of the Ring. I mean, they're pretty much exact.
It's like a homage, right? It's like a homage.
It is.
Yeah, but yeah, that's about all I'm going to say.
Let's go, Phil.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm kind of struggling with the riddles and the wordplay. I assume that the Choo Choo story was more kind of tied into Roland and the was it the station where we first met Jake, like that kind of a reference. The Restaurant of the Mind. Now I kind of wish I paid a little bit more attention to where they were saying, hey, this author comes from here, this author comes from there. Just thinking more about the direction kind of theory and whatnot.
Let's go. Before I go, let's go, Trev. What you think?
I think they use that as a way to show how intelligent Jake is, how witty he is. I mean, I think Jake is probably the most intelligent of the three besides Roland.
I will admit that we get a lot more literary references from Jake. We do get a lot from Eddie, but we find out that Eddie's more like both literary and movie like accomplished. But Jake as well, he was asked if he had seen Fistful of Dollars and Good Bad. He's like, I already seen them.
I have a question.
Hit it.
The story about the Choo Choo, is that discussed in this first book, or because things are running into each other for me?
They are, and specifically in this part we're talking about, this is when he goes to the bookstore and picks up Charlie the Choo Choo and the Book of Riddles.
Don't he read the book entirely though?
He does.
At one point in time
during this part.
Yeah, when that okay, so that's in the book. We stay in book one then, right? Okay. I just want to make sure because it seems to be running to. Yeah.
I just for the audiobook readers, this might not be a thing, but I just want to put that the train is featured on the cover.
And it also kind of mirrored Jake's journey because he was with Roland and then he kind of got tossed aside and then now he's back with Roland.
Ooh, good point.
Wow.
I did like that. I want to say my understanding is like when you did like especially the wordplay and the riddles, they always have like, especially the ones we got, because some of the riddles we got here were kind of basic. When is a door ajar? When is not a
when a door is not real.
When is a door not a door? When is a jar? The garbage truck one. But they're there for reasons, right? Like reading into them, like why would you use that riddle? They all play into something else, right? The door is a door. Of course, the big part of the end of the story involves a door, and the previous book with the drawing of three. But it's like the river book, and we go back to if I forget the saying, but if water wants it, God will will it. What's up, DJ YCZ? But I want to say that I always took them as like kind of like clues leading on to stuff coming up, and of course some of this is direct clues leading up and stuff that kind of already happens stuff too. I don't know. Let's see. So
way the Jake sort of interprets the book when he's reading it, the book doesn't say anything about it. The way he interprets it makes it even darker, right?
I want to say the whole read to me was always dark. Like I never, you know, it's because you come across the books and riddles, and he was actually kind of happy to see that. But then, like, when he gets to Charlie the Choo Choo, like the whole read, just the artwork, and you know, and of course for us real readers, and I can show you how we do get one picture of the way it's supposed to look, and it does look creepy. Like, it doesn't look like something that you know you'd want your kids to read, kind of thing. But I kind of love that idea, like there being this creepy, like horror
Yeah.
children's book
Were
out
they
there.
really happy or were they screaming and yelling?
Mhm.
I'm looking for the picture.
Blaine is a pain.
If you go back to some of those older children's stories, like you mentioned Aesop's Fables before, I remember there's a couple of them where you're like, yeah, that's kind of crazy that they have that in a kid's book.
Yeah, are they laughing or crying? Are they
Yeah.
happy or they want to get off?
I want to say that the awesome thing about it is it doesn't matter how you look at it. They're both. They're happy and sad. I mean, it's no physical.
Schrodinger's cat.
But
Yeah, but you can like
right,
look at the
Phil?
Look at the conductor. Yeah.
look at that dude.
Good
Like,
old
I mean,
Bob there is happy.
even in the story, like
He looks like an evil Mike to me.
it could be. No, he was blonde. He had hair, and they were like waving in the train.
Well, I mean the laugh. I mean the laugh.
Yeah, no, I'll take it. I'll be that dude.
But you're right.
Engineering Bob.
They put the books in there for a reason. Like, he went into that bookstore, he found those two books. I when I first read it too, I was trying to figure out where the hell is he going with it. I know it was going to be important, and then to have the riddle book with all the answers were torn out in the back of it.
Yeah, that's sad.
I knew that was significant too. Like, why are there no answers in the back?
That
What are
part,
they gonna do with this riddle book?
I remember reading it. I was all like, you know, like of course the answers wouldn't be there. Like, why, you know, especially because it comes across the books and they're almost like magical items, right? Like he was supposed to find those books, like they were pointed out to him, you know, by weird read. But at the same time, it's like, oh, of course the answers aren't there, and of course, like one of the riddles he gets asked is one of the riddles of the answers he didn't have. Like,
See, I kind of thought that the books were kind of placed there by the guy who I was going to say the librarian, but the bookstore owner, and that
by Calvin Tower.
Yeah, and he's someone else in Midworld. My first thought was maybe the Man in Black himself, but that kind of doesn't jive with the Man in Black's not going to help Jake at this point. If anything, whatever he's going to do is going to hurt him.
You bring up a real good point, though, because an element of the story that we really don't see in this reading, right? We don't see that the red element, the bad element, you know. So I mean, as a reader, I could see how, especially by this time with traps and blah blah blah, that like any moment, you know, Walter could pop up and be like, "I got you, sucker," you know, like, like I was waiting for you to slow down, you know. I mean, but it's really not there, right?
It kind of had the whole scene kind of had like a very like never-ending story kind of feeling in it for me.
Ooh, that's part of this, right? And I've tried to like, so I mean,
that's anymore. Let's go next.
I mean, the bigger reference is King Arthur, right? And that's what we're, you know, just take out Roland for King Arthur, and that's what right now he's building his Knights of the Round Table. He's getting his talismans and his swords, and he's heading to fight the big battle. You know, we don't know what.
I liked whenever Jake was, you know, getting the key and then going and getting the books, like all the references of Tower. That Tower record, that guy's name was Tower.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to bring that up, right?
That he saw, yeah.
I mean,
how many
the name
road signs do you need?
Yeah, I mean the name of the store is Restaurant on the Mine, right? And then he goes inside, and not only does he see a tower, I mean he physically sees a book like made into a tower, and the dude's name is Calvin Tower. Like he happens to find, like, you know. Well, technically at this point, we don't know if the books are of help, but that they are. They're he's supposed to find them, kind of thing. But even with the key, we see that, right? And I haven't got there yet, but we do see that with the key, that it's not just the key, right? That he was able to use it, like, you know, and
mesmerize people.
Yeah, it was literally like, I mean, a talisman, and it had magical properties. It wasn't just that it was able to fool a cop. It's kind of like a Jedi mind trick, right? But it was like a whole another thing, because it was like every person that laid their damn eyes on the key were just gone, zombies, like taken into whatever magic laid behind this thing. And
Yep.
it's that involvement. Going back to a bigger moment was the rose, and that vacant lot, and that whole scene to me is just magical. Reading that, you talk about goosebumps on the bottom of my feet, baby. Like, no, but like,
You should get that looked at.
yeah, probably. Okay, but
It's gotta feel weird.
seriously, that whole scene, how like everything is magnified, slowed down, like everything is singing. You were talking about the voices, and this specific scene is one of the 3 scenes that we do hear voices that are not inside their head. These are voices that are described as so overwhelming that you would have, you'd have to cover your ears if it bothered you, kind of thing. And you know, we even get that moment where Jake is like freaking out that anything could happen to Rose. No, I have to protect it. I have to stay here for the rest of my life and protect this thing, because it's so pure and holy and whatever. And then he gets that little like voice from Roland, or Roland from another world is like, hey bro, it's good. It's got its
It
own
can protect
power.
itself.
Yeah, you don't need to do that. What's up, man? So I'm gonna go back to the scene with the question. At both times, we've seen grass on a mythical level. This is the second time that this grass has been explained to have a purple alien color to it. Alien is an underlined word. Both of these phrases. What is King trying to say with this blade of grass? And this, for instance, if you don't know the references, when we were back at the Golgotha with Roland and he was showing the macroverse, at the very tip of that macroverse was a piece of grass that had a green but purple outlying tint to it that was seen as alien. And with the rose, all the grass that's directly touching the rose has an alien purple tint to it. I'm gonna go with. Let's go with you, Trev. You right there. Ha!
Thank goodness.
Pass. Pass.
This is a tough one. Steve, let's go with you. You got any knowledge on why the alien purpleness to the grass of this mythical object that we've come across?
That's not so mythical. The tower has all these roses all around it. And these roses represent the multiverse of all these different worlds, and they're all attached together. So the rose in New York, that's the rose for that world that's attached directly to the Dark Tower. I don't know, the grass around it, that could be whatever doorway between the two of them. That's my thoughts on it.
Like bleed over maybe from the rose.
That's why, yeah, there's millions upon billions of roses. There's fields of it around the tower. That's the multiverse. The tower
Yep.
is in the center of it all, controlling everything. If the tower falls, all the multiverse falls apart. And then
Yep.
the darkness will get in.
Hmm.
I'm gonna go with you. Any thoughts on the purple?
No, I don't. I have no idea on that one.
Phil.
Trev, if it's not too much of a trouble, can you put up that image you had before? I need to just magnify something. I have an idea, but I got to look at it. Okay, bear with my fingers here for a second. Okay. So what I'm noticing when I'm looking at this wheel, and you have the 6 beams, you have all the names of the guardians, and you have some of the animals actually written here, come to think of it, that we've seen already. On either end of the spectrums here, we have rows. What does that say to the right? I can't see that too well. 12 guardians, and then what's to the right there? 12
second.
portals. So, I mean, my theory is that the rose itself, and this I think kind of meshes a little bit with what Steve said. I can't see the smaller print, but the rose themselves is the actual gateway or the actual portal, not necessarily to this other world, but through these other worlds here. Like each of these different corresponding sections here are different possibilities or different worlds. So to that end of it, the rose is kind of like a rotating door between the two that they can travel.
Very cool.
I actually loved it a lot, and we actually get another purple reference beside the grass that I was kind of hoping somebody might, but the purple is
Still might catch it.
directly related to the light that comes off the portal Jake steps through. So that whole, like, maybe that being the portal between worlds or the space between worlds, and there is something coming up in the next book that also has a purple tint to it that is kind of said to be between worlds, kind of thing. But that's what I'm gonna leave it.
So is the devil grass then from the first book kind of like the antithesis of the, we'll call it portal grass?
Could very
Devil
well
grass
be.
does have purple tint to it.
Like it's the evil side of this grass.
On this, I
don't know.
me
If you eat it.
preferably, I don't know if there's an exact. I don't know if this has actually been answered. So, I mean, at this point, anything can go. But I kind of like that because Steve is right, and the road that specific rose is that rose to that earth. You know, and around the Dark Tower is just a field of roses, and being encompassing the whole macroverse.
Maybe there was way more roses in Midworld, and all the devil grass is just left over for the roses that are gone.
Ooh,
Could be.
That's cool. I like that.
Wow.
I do like that.
Wow, Trev.
And to add on to that, it's ironic that touching, using, or eating the devil grass it like hurts, or
Well, I
like
mean, basically,
Kills
you
you.
you travel to a fake world. I mean, Evergrass gives you fake words, right? Hallucination and
I do
all
love
different universe.
it.
The devil's lettuce.
The devil. All right,
That's something a little different there.
Okay, so and this has been started a little bit in the last book, but a lot in this book, and it's something that you might just pass over as you're reading it. But there are hidden themes of 3s for Jake, and 2s for the quartet, and blues and reds for Jake. Blue is almost everything that Jake sees. Every folder, every pair of pants, every. The only other color reference during Jake's time in New York, and I'll give you a clue if you're around New York, but it happens to be like yellow for cabs, and that's about the only other color that's referenced outside of white, red, and blue. Anybody have any?
Blue book is a real thing, though. Blue book is the real taste
Oh yeah,
thing.
oh yeah.
It's light blue, actually, not real. But
Just to
anyway.
give you an example of like how blue is referenced so much in Jake's one page, there's 13 blue references while he's in school, leading up to a blue door, blue book, blue chairs, blue clothes, blue eyes,
Blue eyes.
blue eyes.
Blue eyes.
Roland's eyes.
You know
Blue,
who's
oh
got
yeah,
the blue
that
eyes.
was the Roland's eye.
Was the car that hit him blue? I was trying to think.
A blue Cadillac.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was. Big old blue Cadillac.
And this one I'm just going to throw out there. If
And he was
anybody
wearing a blue hat, I
any
think, too.
thoughts on hidden themes of 3s for Jake and 2s for the quartet?
Holy cow. That's super deep.
Now, to give you like a little, information, there are numbers that are referenced by the quartet, but you're talking about within the quartet's short period in the book, they reference 7 once, 8 once, but how many times they reference twos. In one chapter, it's 13 times. The next chapter, it's 11. Like with Jake, almost every number he references are three.
Well, the last
So
book was the book of threes. Jake's just catching up.
Let's go.
So I wanna. What's that, Brasco? I want to like just throw this out because I don't know if there's a definite answer to this either. But my thinking behind this was always like we're suffering this paradox, right? And we're trying to fix this paradox. How incidentally is everything else lining up to fixing the paradoxes? Like Jake seeing three, he is the third missing member of the quartet with Roland. Twos, well, Eddie and Susan are the only two there besides Roland. I always saw like, and the culmination of the numbers stops happening once they make it to Dutch Hill. Like after that, the numbers actually coincide with the way they are on that side of the doors. So I want to say, to me, that's always that's kind of how I read it. Is like, it's more of the fade, more of the white, like everything leading to those things. Like Jake being the corrected number of the group, and you know Eddie and Susanna not being the only members of the group, kind of thing. I don't know.
So wait, let me ask you something then. By that thought, if there's supposed to be three members of the quartet, does that mean that Roland is not officially a member, or is there going to be a character who's going to die or vanish or whatnot? I mean, Roland is literally falling apart.
It's a little different. Like, and then this will be like where y'all get to stop me if I'm wrong. At this point in the book, it's seen as quartet as the group, right? But they've established another word, and that's Dendan. Dendan means like leader of the group or mentor or something like that. So, in my understanding, the way like quartet is referenced, it is always like there's a member, the first member, and then he's the one that forms the group for whatever reason. So you would reference like the other people in the quartet as the quartet kind of thing. I don't know if you
Yeah.
reference Roland. Like it's always referenced as Roland and his quartet. It's never just the quartet kind of thing.
You're right, because then when you look at it, Eddie, Suzanne, and Jake are all from Earths of different periods, and they all have that commonality between the three of them. They all
And
have
then,
that
and then
special.
Roland separate.
Roland's the outsider.
Where I see it is that
He's their teacher.
where I see is that I'm going back to book 2 and also tag on Trev's idea. The Roland is a card player, and the 3 are the cards that's drawn, and then the reason Roland doesn't know everything because the cards has been shuffled on him, right? So like
I like that. I mean, that lines up with that too, right? Because just like the quartet at a poker table, you have the dealer, and then you have everybody that's playing. You wouldn't really consider the dealer part of the game, even though he is part of the game. He's not playing the game. But no, I think especially when we just came out of the drawing and the reference to all the cards, we know the shuffle and the reshuffle.
Roland is not drawn. He's been
He's
dealt.
there.
He's been
He's
dealt
there.
the cards. He's one of the players in the poker table. He's not the card, right? So.
And I want to say the blues and red references. The blues, it's Roland. This boy he wants to get back to Roland, so everything's coming up blues. It's not with the quartet. The references aren't there. It's really with Jake, and that's it's just like that underlying theme that the love is there, that he remembers that, especially going through the paradox of the death or the life after. And he's kind of at this point decided. I mean, he references like how many times? I mean, like this is going to be the last day I go to school, or this was the day, like, I mean, who as a kid at 12 is like, yep, that's going to be the last day of school forever,
Yeah,
or that's going to
premonitions.
be, yeah, like, what do I say to my parents the last time I say something to them, like,
Do you remember how it was written too? When Jake came to that intersection, and the pusher was not behind him, what happened? He almost threw himself onto the bloody street because he was
yeah,
anticipating it so much
Mhm.
that Buddy grabbed him and hauled him back. Otherwise, he would have thrown himself into the street without the pusher pushing him.
and not just the
Kind of funny.
once, but twice, right? Because later on, right after that, he stops in the middle of the street and gets yelled at by the cab driver, like, what you doing, man? What you doing?
Yep. But
Mm.
you're right about that number is the 3 and the 2. The 2 means something as well, but we can't talk about it because that'll spoil the crap out of it.
Oh yeah. Well, that no. But there is some other there's some other underlying stuff that I was hoping maybe somebody would bring up, but there's a lot of 99s, a lot of like with the phone numbers, a lot of the but it's more like with Jake because he's I guess in New York and there's more numbers around,
Yeah.
but it's all that's just kind of leading to him being a part of the content.
Let me ask you, am I remembering right when Jake is where he was going to get pushed? The woman carrying the shopping bag with the doll, was it tied in a red towel?
Yes, it
Yeah,
was with
it
blue
was.
eyes.
So the red was still there, but I find it kind of interesting that the pusher wasn't there.
Well, incidentally, with the lady with the doll and stuff, there's actually, and I guess that could be a good question. Is this the same Jake that we knew before? Or is this the same Earth? I mean,
Pusher is dead though, right? Pusher is dead.
at
Yeah.
this moment, he wouldn't be. The
Yeah.
moment he's killed is a little bit later.
No, he killed the day prior to the.
But Namman, remember, multiple Earths. Which Earth is this? Is this the same Jake? Is this a different Jake?
Yeah, because we get a couple different references, and Jake even points this out because he talks about the hot dog vendor drinking the Yoo-hoo can, but in this situation it's a bottle, and then the pusher not being there, and so it leads you to either the thinking either that this is a completely different Jake, a completely different Earth, that where these events are just lining up the same because parallel, or this is the same event that's just laying out in a different way, kind of Loki style, different branches kind of thing, because A happened, now B is going in different ways kind of thing.
See, it makes me kind of think that, going by our past discussion here, if this is a card game, so to speak, and Roland is a player, I'm assuming the person he's playing against is the man in black. So if this is some sort of card game, what's the man in black's counter, and how come we haven't seen it yet at this point in the story?
Or have we? Maybe that was Jack Moore. I mean, the whole purpose of the reshuffle, maybe that was, the red trying to, stumble up our hero kind of thing. I mean, why would you throw like not just a villain in the path of this hero that's gaining a group, but why would you throw a villain that's so tied to this group at our hero with only one outcome to do with this dude? I mean, like, the second you met Jack Moore, if the thought of this dude needs to die like instantly because of his actions kind of thing didn't pop in your mind like right off the bat.
Yeah.
So what was the purpose of King even throwing Jack Moore in the door first to begin with? And my ideas have always gone back to that, was that it was not intended. Jake was supposed to be in that door. That was Walter, stumbling our dude.
Here's my mind. I mean, this is my thing. I just thought of this while you guys talking about card game here. But let's assume Roland draws 5 cards. He has to discard some of them too, right? So let's assume he got 2 jacks and he got deuce. So he discards the deuce, and when he's redrawn, he basically he draws a Joker, which is Jack, and with the three of them, he has three of a kind, right? That has upgraded his card game, right? So now the Jack being the Joker is uh, useful for Roland, but each one of these cards serve Roland, whether you're discarded or whether you are being played. Each one of these cards serve Roland, not other way around, right? I mean, that's the way, that's the way I see this
I
card.
like that, and it actually got me thinking about something else. Just to add in there, just like a card game, that there is something that flows always
The river.
alongside a card. That's right. And then the ironic thing is, since we've started the quest, once we got to the end of the Gunslinger, that there happens to just be a river that just happens to be by the group at like all times. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I look at it more as, I mean, the Man in Black's not all evil. I mean, everything that he does kind of gives Roland a purpose and a line to travel. So even though I think he did change the third door, he did it with a purpose in mind to show Roland you can, fix Odetta by doing this. So even though he does throw wrenches in his plans and in the way, they always have some sort of purpose.
Yep.
I mean, at this
You're
point in the
exactly
story,
right, Trev. You're exactly right.
yeah, he is. I mean, at this point in the story, have we seen evil evidence from Walter? I mean, yeah, he performed like a exorcism, but I mean, then that can be taken as evil. But I mean, in some circles, that can be seen as like a super blessing, right? This dude brought somebody back to life. But I mean, what other examples have we seen of? I mean, like, yeah, we saw like him give this girl like a note that made the town go crazy, but like that would.
I'm not gonna make an excuse for Walter. He freaking possessed the whole freaking town, and what?
Yeah.
But look what Roland did that first book.
Okay?
Roland did almost worse stuff than the Man in Black.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
he did.
he forced his hand to do it too. So
True.
yeah.
I'm trying to think back to the tarot cards at the end of the first book to see if there's something that ties back to Jake. I just can't think of all the cards at this point. I have to
Sailor
look it
was
up
his card.
afterwards. I'm
Yep,
sorry.
and there was a few of his own making in there too.
Yeah, the Sailor was his card. Remember, there was a special deck. It was explained that this wasn't a regular tarot. It was a like Walter made.
Extra cards.
Yeah.
And we find
No,
out
but
that Walter
but-
has told us flat out that he's being told what to do here. He has a master.
He
We
has-
were told flat out in that whole thing. Like he's being told what to do because he would have just gone his own way or just killed Roland flat out. He had we see that he had the power to do that easily. Roland couldn't even kill him. He shot at him a bunch of times and he missed every single time.
Couldn't even touch him.
Exactly.
I mean, literally.
Doesn't he tell Roland, "You can't kill me just as well as I can't kill you"?
Exactly.
He is.
Told.
Is that an option, or does that mean he can't kill him? You know what I mean? Or is it he's being told not to kill him?
That we lead that up to you, to decide, because some of that could. I mean, it could easily go either way. Maybe he can't kill him because it's not written. Maybe he can't.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those destiny versus fate. I mean,
Ka plays a major thing in this.
Anyway,
all right. Yeah, let's move on.
Let's go.
Yeah. I do want to. I don't know if anybody, but we do get our first appearance of somebody that we've mentioned in all three the episodes of this show. But page 159, we finally get to see what the fuck a Billy Bumbler is.
Yes.
Hell yeah!
Beautiful gold rimmed eyes, and no, but we do get we get to see one solo, and we get to see like a little group of them, and I love the way they reference. They look like they're about to hang somebody. All right, so let's move on.
Dude, badgers Badgers are fierce. You do not want to mess with the badger. They're one
No,
of the
honey
fierce
badger,
Oh,
man,
yeah.
those things are
You hear what
nuts.
they're mixed with, right? It's
Yeah,
like
a
raccoon,
raccoon.
badger.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with any of them types of animals. All right, so we got Door and Demon. Shifting back to Roland and the quartet, Jake sends Eddie a message that the key will calm Roland's paradox. Jake has a dream meeting a future past version of Eddie that leads to the path to Dutch Hill. Gathering supplies, Jake heads to Co-op City and finds Henry and Eddie is led to the mansion. Roland and Susan and Eddie travel the beam and finally come to the spot to birth Jake into their world. Another speaking demon circle. Eddie draws a door. Susan fucks to save her to save everybody. At the same time, the doorkeeper of the house awakens, tries to eat Jake. Roland fires a demon bullet at the doorkeeper, and Jake is pulled through the door. All right, so the theme of sacrifice continues to be prominent in this story. Who do these sacrifices? Who do these sacrifices impact the group and their quest, or how do these sacrifices impact this group and their quest? And the sacrifice I'm directly relating to in the story is Eddie and his childness and his innocence. Who wants to go first? Let's go with you, Namman. Let's get you up there first.
So what's
What
the
do you
question?
think sacrifices have to do with our group and their quest? I mean, we came across a huge sacrifice that Roland had to make in the first book. We came across some sacrifices in the second book, and now we're getting to a pretty big one in my mind, especially in Stephen King's mind. That imagination and childlikeness is super important.
Well, I mean, you're talking about where he has to basically sacrifice Henry, his brother, because what I mean, he has to. His brother basically kept him from growing up. You know, so he's by giving up Henry, he's allowed to grow. He's allowed to become adult finally, and that's what he sacrificed. That's what the sacrifice meant for Eddie. That's the way I read it anyway.
Let's go, Phil.
See, in terms of Eddie, I didn't necessarily see him with his brother so much as a sacrifice as I did kind of a realization. I mean, the bigger sacrifice, I think, in this particular area of the book was Susanna. Was I wrong in thinking that she kind of let Odetta come back to fuck the demon? Did I hear it wrong, maybe?
Yes and no. Like, she's just always there now. Like, she could be kind of the way I take it is like, you know, she could be fierce when she needs to, and that fierce's name is Odetta, and she could be smart and calm and stuff. And when that happens, it's you know, Odetta.
See, because my thought was she had to kind of sacrifice control over to Odetta, and even Odetta herself had to kind of sacrifice her pride and, you know, never being raped or touched whenever she was teasing these people in her backstory. In terms of Eddie, I mean, I guess I could see it as okay, maybe he's sacrificing the image he had in his head of his brother, because up to this point, really, well, not up to this point, but up to this book, I should say, you know, he kind of almost still idolized his brother, even though his brother wasn't particularly somebody who should have been idolized. In fact, what I thought was kind of more interesting in here was the way that Eddie was, I think when they were in the flashback, and wasn't there something that Eddie pushed him?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking, is there more of a parallel to the pusher and Jake in that kind of sense?
Now, I wasn't comparing. I wasn't making what Odetta or Susanna sacrificed. I wasn't comparing. I wasn't comparing whether the one was had a more sacrifice than the other. I was just answering Mike's question about Eddie's. What did he sacrifice? That's what I was answering. I wasn't saying
Oh, no,
one
I understand. Yeah.
had more to sacrifice than the other.
No, no, I understand that.
I
My
was
whole
just
thing
saying
is,
that I was just saying that far as Eddie is concerned, he was he had to let go of, basically he had to let go of his brother in out of let the voice get out of him, and he couldn't let his brother guilt him into being less than what he was.
I mean,
That's
technically, we
what he
saw.
had. That's all I'm saying is that
no, I get you. I
I'm
get
not,
No,
I'm
you.
not saying that
Yeah.
one had a more sacrifice than the other. I was
No,
I
just
no,
understand
I
that.
don't
Yeah.
think there's like the level. I don't think we're talking about that. But there is. I mean, throughout the whole story in the flashbacks, right? We see sacrifice on both sides, whether it's good or bad. But we see like Henry's forced to sacrifice like a normal life because he has to constantly watch over his little brother and guilt of his parents. And then we see like the opposite from Eddie, where he has to sacrifice bits and pieces of himself to not get beat the fuck up by his brother for being, better or whatnot.
But
Or
he also still loved his brother. He didn't want his brother to
yeah,
be,
yeah,
so
yeah.
That I could see. Okay.
No, but even in the speaking demon circle, I mean, like that was brought up as well. We see Susanna sacrifice things that she would have never done in the real world. Stuff. I mean, that whole situation, her talking about that, where she, I forget what she calls the roadside attraction place or whatever, but where she would take those white guys and
The
tease the
drawers.
hell out of the drawers, yeah,
Hmm.
tease the hell out of them and then leave them high and dry and stuff for her to like, especially to call on Detta, and which I believe she did, to fight that demon, like, that was something that Detta held in high esteem, something like that. So I saw that as a sacrifice. Steve, what you got to add to this, buddy?
All right. So yes, Nauman, you're right on the nose there. But the thing is, you got to think about this. Okay, the people out here watching, they don't know some of the story that we didn't talk about. Now, Eddie and Henry had a sister, and the sister was run over by a car and died. That's why the mom and dad are freaked out, and they want to make sure Henry always takes care of Eddie
Yep.
to watch him because they don't want him to die, just like the daughter is dead, and they'll never reconcile themselves over that. So that's always been a problem between Henry and Eddie because, Eddie was better at everything than Henry, but he idolized his brother so much that he held himself back. So there was the problem there. So now he had to basically, in this moment, he held himself back again to get that key perfect. He knew exactly what to do, but he held himself back. So he needed to forgive himself for all the bullshit he did in the past and letting everybody get to him and let himself basically be held up from his greatness that was already there. He had that greatness in him and he held it back because of guilt. So he had to forgive himself and sacrifice that and just give it up and say, okay, I forgive myself for everything I've done. I will do this thing the right way. Okay, we're bringing him through because he had to give all that up. And the childhood enjoyment of that key, this is where it really freaking mattered. So that was another thing too that's kind of sacrificed. He used to enjoy whittling. So now it was for something serious, for something important, and he couldn't screw it up. He screwed
Yeah.
it up, it meant the death of Jake.
this dynamic of the first boy, second boy complex. This dynamic is it's a pretty common dynamic within
Yeah, it
families.
is.
You know, the first
Yeah, the big brother watching out for the
big
little brother.
brother is there's a lot of expectation for older kid.
I know what I'm talking about because I have an older brother named Trevor, and I have a younger sister named Julie. And I am the
I'm
middle child. I'm Eddie.
I'm the oldest of 11. So
I have
Well,
two boys. One's the older. I better not say anything. Okay, never mind. This is public minute. Go ahead.
but it brings up another good like maybe imagination topic, but the loss of the sister, right? Maybe Henry during his life could have been something way better, like Eddie, but because of the guilt and the the demand that his parents put on him led him to the life that we find Eddie in, going to the army, maybe trying to get away from that forced, purpose that he had to do back home and taking care of Eddie. Maybe the, him coming back home, he just didn't want to leave it, so it led to the drugs, and then, all that I feel can be stemmed back to the loss of the sister. We don't. I want to say we don't see a lot of that from Eddie play out. Like,
No, he
not,
was too young at the time, so he probably didn't know his sister as well as Henry
Mhm.
did. So Henry was the older one, so he knew a lot more. He had to end up sacrificing more, and that's what they were always teaching Eddie, that your older brother, he's sacrificed everything for you. You owe him everything.
Trev, you got anything to add on this, buddy?
Yeah, I think Steve nailed it. It's basically sacrificing his childhood. He was so dependent upon Henry when Henry was alive, and then he was dependent upon Roland the whole time he was here. I mean, going back to the clearing with all the guardians, he wanted Roland to fix it for them and
Yeah.
not use his own ability. He was like they were saying, he was being held back. He broke down at one point and was sobbing, and Roland picked him up during that whole exchange. We didn't really go over that,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
and Roland's like, I mean, because talking to Jake, hearing Jake's voices, he didn't want to come to terms with the fact that their fate depended upon him.
hmm
So up until the very end there, and he actually recited the Gunslinger's Creed and went to work and actually followed through and became a man, basically.
Yeah.
The
Like
sacrifice.
on his own ability.
The sacrifice allowed him to stand on his own, right? Not be dependent of this and that. Be able to fix the problem on his own, and exactly. I mean, to the force, right? I mean, throughout the book, Eddie is constantly like, "Man, like I wish you could have done that. Why didn't you do this? Kind of thing." And it's funny because we do see the yin and yang. We have one group member who questions almost everything that comes up, and we have the other group member who just, who's there, puts in the work, goes through the ramble, and is willing to even get on the ground. And man, I love Suzanne.
I mean, this whole book, the first half of the book at least, is all about where Roland pulling out the gunslinger in every one of these guys.
Making them leaders. He's building leaders is what he's doing.
Yeah, yeah. So
He's not the only leader by the end of this.
I mean, yeah, I always imagined it, and let's reference something else back to Star Wars, like a gunslinger, like a Jedi Knight. And once a Jedi Knight was trained, they were sent out into the known universe to tackle problems on their own. And we're talking about like whole planets worth of dilemmas. So I always kind of imagined that if a gunslinger operated in that world, that was kind of like, that you would send them out to a baron to fix its problems, or kind of thing. So I mean, this is what he's building, is something of that force that can either be a force to reckon with, destruction innate, or of peaceful nature, and that democracy and that kind of thing.
Made me think of Judge Dredd right away.
Which is funny because isn't Dredd referenced in this?
Yeah.
And there's a ton of literary and music references in this. I mean, I don't know how many I highlighted, which I love. And Trev, thank you so much for pointing out the moment that a bunch of emotional moments in this book.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite, especially with Roland, like that scene where Eddie is crying. I mean, it's not even spoken; it's just he's crying, and then from that whole scene. So the very last part of this book, it's the last part is them pulling Jake through, and Jake has two questions. Have they come to the train? Which he's like, okay, that hasn't happened yet. That's brushed off very quickly. And the next part is he has a question for Roland, and that question is, are you going to drop me again? Okay, so my last question of the show: do you see a time where this could happen? What like, is this a thought at this point in the story? Has Roland changed? Have you as a reader determined whether that's even an issue that Jake should be asking, or Has Roland turned a new leaf? Because reading that passage twice, Roland doubts, even though he promises, it's still deep down in his heart. He doesn't know what he's willing to do for the tower, kind of thing. Do you see that in the story, especially hinted at the last part of our reading segment? Do you see that being something that's coming, something that could happen? Do you see Roland being able to sacrifice any of his members in the hopes of reaching the tower? Let's go with Trev, buddy. You're right there.
I think they will sacrifice themselves.
Ooh. That they'll understand the quest, be down for it, and be willing to sacrifice themselves. I
I
love
think
it.
all of them know that they're. I mean, they've all relegated themselves to never going back to their worlds. So whatever the end of the quest is for them is why they're here.
Bill, what you got?
I think Trev nailed it. I think that, yeah, they would do it themselves without question at this point.
Steve or Namman, when you were reading this the first time,
Well, the first time I read it, I thought I didn't think like Trev and Phil did. I thought that he ain't going to change his spots. He's going to sacrifice anybody he needs to sacrifice to get his damn fix. And he doubts it himself. That's exactly. But I love Phil and Trev. You guys, perfect.
Me too. I love that. Because I'm with Steve. I didn't, the first time reading this, especially with the 2 counts of doubt. I was kind of like, oh damn, like, like poor Eddie. What are you gonna do to Eddie, man? You're gonna push him off a bridge?
I agree with the Trev and Phil. I don't know if after I read it, if that's what I thought. But one thing that I find that realistic is that Roland is having a self-doubt. I think that's honestly, I think that's more healthier than being I'm not going to ever do it.
Yeah,
because
he's not lying to himself.
Yeah. I love those parts of the story, right? The emotion part. I love when Roland cracks the joke. He does like 2 during this boat.
I like I personally don't trust people that says I will do it. I'm never going to do it. I trust a person that says I think when I like to think that I'm going to do that, but when that time comes, will I be able to overcome myself or not? I don't know. I like an honest answer like that than a person who's either delusional, thinking that they will just do it, or lie to you and say that they will do it. Right.
So let's make this a little easier and lay out the same damn track. At this point, if Roland literally went back to that exact moment in time through a door and he was faced with Jake hanging, would he let Jake fall this time, or would he grab his ass?
Well, I mean, I'd be spoiling it if I tell you the book 7 or 8. So
well, the answer's right there in front. He would grab his ass. He just brought him back into the. Come on now, he was loving her. He loved him just as much as Jake loved him. Come on now. What were we saying, Trey? At this point?
At this point, yeah, he would grab him because it was tearing him apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Roland himself is a much different person than what we saw at the beginning of the story. I mean, he's no longer thinking of himself as, this is my mission. I think he's kind of, just as the creed is about accepting, you're serving a higher purpose. I think that's what his thought is now. What's the good of the group or the good of the larger purpose?
Actually, you're 100% right, because at no time in this book at all, 0%, does Roland reference his quest. Me. Now it is the quartet. It's the group. It's he speaks in the right. Now it's like the.
He realizes he needs all of them to make it to the tower.
The change. All right, so that is where we leave off. I mean,
just to let you know, I will explain myself after book 7. Okay.
Can we talk
well,
about how epic that last
uh,
scene was with him saving Jake
all of it.
Yeah, it was great.
with the demon bullet?
And this
My
is
blood was pumping. Like I was on pins and needles. It was
the
amazing.
demon bully. He was like, "Yeah, buddy, take this," and what the demon was doing to the gatekeepers, though, it was like choking them from the inside out. Like,
Could you guys stop reading at that point?
oh
Yes.
man, that part just flows. You're talking about the second
Golly.
Jake gets into the mansion. And okay, this is something that is known within the community for some reason. This thing is always called the Dutch Hill House, and y'all just read this, right? No one time is it ever referenced as a house. It's always the mansion. It's always I don't know where that came from in fandom, but every time it's referenced, even in the movie, it's called the Dutch Hill House. Like I don't know where that popped up. But no, the second Jake hits that part in the story on both ends of the story, right? Because we got the speaking demon. Like, who thought we were gonna get another circle? Like, how many of these circles are in Midworld with these speaking demon circles? You know, I don't know. So
Yeah, just
last but not
the suspense, just Jake opening it up and it not being open from the other side, so it's just
Looking
dirt.
at dirt.
I was
sucks.
just like, oh,
Oh,
my
that
gosh.
sucks.
And it was he can
Dude, him
write
dropping the key.
suspense very well.
Let me ask you this: your fandom for this Dark Tower series have gone up, or is it steady, or
I know Trev's
from
answer.
book two?
I loved the first book. The second book was a letdown, and this book was my favorite so far.
So
It's
is
not
it
over
is it
yet.
making it go up, or
Oh, for sure.
okay?
I absolutely loved this book.
Phil.
This particular chapter, the demon in the door, to be honest, was my favorite of it. It's making it go up because I'm invested already into this journey. I want to see how it ends.
So last but not least, let's hear some predictions. The next title of the book is Lud. We kind of saw a little bit of Lud in the distance. You know, it's kind of like Midworld's New York, let's just say. You know, so Phil, Trev, any predictions on either this book or what's to come? You know, any kind of direction?
The only thing that kind of sticks out to me right now, when the story started, Jake met Roland at this train station, this way station, whatever it is. We now learn in a flashback that Jake met a young Eddie and his brother. I'm starting to wonder if at some point Jake time traveled or something and met Susanna or one of her personalities. And I'm wondering if Jake is more than is this kind of denominator between them, I guess.
Trev, you got anything? Trev?
I envision a futuristic city that's been decaying. So maybe another guardian, maybe another creature living in the city. I'm hoping they get supplied, and I'm hoping that possibly there's some cybernetic enhancements to some legs and some fingers, maybe. I don't know.
Then let me ask y'all this. You know,
that'd be cool. That'd be cool. You know what? I remember thinking that myself. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I was like, Christ, they got to get better clothes than deerskin stuff, man.
Yeah, that's what I remember that.
I want my Lola Zen back. I want my Lola Zen back.
Especially after what happens to Susanna, her clothes are just ripped off her. Like,
yeah.
Jake has no pants.
That too. No shoes
walking
either.
around with underwear on.
Yeah, but he packs another pair in his backpack though. He's got another pair of jeans in there.
Laura's fingers or Odeta's, Susanna's legs. Which one? If you had to choose. If you had to choose one, which one you want to be?
Susanna's legs or what was the other?
Laura's fingers.
Susanna's legs.
Susanna's legs.
Yeah. I fell in love with every character. My favorite character was Jake before this book, but in this book, I fell in love with every character.
Phil?
What was the
Favorite
question?
character? Favorite character?
I'd have to say Jake at this point.
I got a question for y'all. So we did see a traditional magical item in this book. Like we saw the key. Yeah, we saw a couple, right? The rose, but traditionally, like in a quest sense, a video game sense, and that is something that's referenced twice in the story, a video game reference, incidentally. But any thoughts and any other magical items that might come along the way, maybe?
They're mentioned or come along?
Yeah, just predictions, guesses.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
come
I was asking, Phil.
That's for
Trev,
Phil and Trev.
Yeah, I mean, we know, and that's not like that there is some stuff. I mean, technically, in this book, you could say Charlie the Choo Choo, the Riddle book, the Rose, the and there is like a fan favorite thing that pops up real quick, and it'll be referenced again. It is a huge like discussion within the community. I don't know if it even rang a bell when you read it or passed it or heard it, but the name Bango Shanks and the graffiti near the rose. It is the one outside element that is around the rose besides the trash. Well, it's the one reference that we had like a human there besides Jake, like somebody jumped the thing and graffitied Bango. I have nothing to add to that. I would just like to throw that out that there is like a huge discussion within the community about who the hell Bango Shanks is and blah blah. But another time, did either one of y'all catch that in the?
I remember the word, but I don't remember the reference or anything.
Yeah, same.
Okay. Well, guys, that is everything. That's pretty much all this episode. We covered all the questions, all the chapters. We got in book 2, Lud, till the end of the book. That's coming next. Of course, that will be in 2 weeks, 2 Saturdays, and unless I hear otherwise, we're gonna keep it at the same time, same bat channel, same dark. No, I'm playing. Anybody have anything else they want to throw out before I end this about this book or this part that we read? Anything we didn't? I love crickets too. All right, guys. Well, thank y'all for joining us. Everybody, everybody that watches this on the rewatch, but that is all from this episode. We'll see y'all in 2
Nick
weeks.
was here. Nick Kicks.
Yeah, see, he popped right at the end, and look at that, he's got some actual like high speech going. Thank you, Side, to his cause, wonderful love and service to the beam. I wish you all long and pleasant nights, and I'm off to finish the Wolves of Cal. Look, he's like 3 books ahead of us.
Wow.
You better be there when we talk about it, Nick.
And may
All
you
right.
have his twice as many.
Hell yeah.
Many.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.